This big movement afoot. I've talked about it. Maybe I'm the only one who talks about it. I don't know. There's this big movement afoot. We're supposed to support allowing more and more convicted criminals out of prison. They call this criminal justice reform. It's being pushed by, in particular, very wealthy billionaires and millionaires and their organizations, as well as others. And it's very dangerous. Barack Obama letting people out of prison, letting people out of Gitmo, this is what he does. I want to read you this piece briefly by Sean Kennedy at National Review Online. The curious case of Corey Jacobs, Eric Holder's poster prisoner, is no choir boy. Now, here's the thing. Typically, when you hear one of these obsessed so-called reformers, they'll have a case or two or five, and they'll tell you about them, and you're supposed to go, woe is me, so let's let 10,000 people out of prison. We call those anecdotes. So we want to take one of the anecdotes that seems to be popular, one that Eric Holder used and others do, the case of Corey Jacobs. In defending further federal leniency for drug offenders in an op-ed for Sunday's New York Times, former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder picked the wrong poster criminal. In Holder's telling, the man he singled out comes across as a confused kid who somehow got caught carrying some weed. The evil machinations of the system swept him up and sent him to prison for life for minor crimes. We hear this kind of stuff all the time. But his chosen example is one Corey Jacobs, whom Holder describes as a college student, no kingpin. But Jacobs was no choir boy. He was a drug kingpin and dangerous narco-trafficker, according to the courts that heard his appeal. According to the case filed against his co-ringleader, Kenneth Kemp, in June 1990, Kemp joined a cocaine distribution conspiracy that had been going on since 1988. He took the place of Dwayne Wilkie, who was killed in a drug-related gun battle. Wilkie and Corey Jacobs were the leaders of the conspiracy, and Kemp became the new co-leader. After years on the run, Jacobs was finally convicted in 2000 of conspiracy to distribute more than 5 kilograms of cocaine, or more than 11 pounds, and more than 50 grams of crack, threshold amounts for the drug sentencing guidelines that his offenses exceeded. The minimum street value of Jacob's stash would have exceeded $1 million. In reality, he was moving much more than that on a regular basis, including vast quantities of cocaine between New York City and Richmond, Virginia. His drug ring succeeded in actually moving 15 kilos of drugs every week. That's called trafficking in law enforcement circles. If he saw even a fraction of that, Jacobs earned tens of millions of dollars in his 5 years running a sophisticated drug enterprise. In short, he got rich off of the suffering and misery of others. As for Eric Holder's claim that Jacobs was nonviolent, Jacobs' original drug ring partner, Dwayne Wilkie, was shot and killed owing to his hazardous occupation in pursuit of ill-gotten profits. Jacobs himself, according to the prosecutors, not only carried guns, but purchased them illegally in furtherance of his drug distribution efforts. So much for being a nonviolent, low-level offender. Drug kingpin, check. Menace to society, check. He was no bit player, and he had no remorse for his crimes. Court records show that he denied he was even a party to the crimes for which he was convicted. Holder should find better examples to make the case that we should release more federal offenders from prison, but he may have trouble doing so, since most drug offenders in federal prison don't get there by accident, or even overzealous prosecution. Recently, National Review Online cited the comments of a U.S. attorney who works in a border state. Quote, "So when the public hears about somebody who's facing a mandatory minimum, that's often left unreported is that it isn't the offender's first rodeo. By definition, they're dealers, not simple possessors, moving significant quantities, and either have a serious criminal history or are leaders or organizers of criminal groups." That certainly applies to Corey Jacobs. It was his first convicted offense, but it was a doozy. Holder lamented incredulously, quote, "Sadly, Mr. Jacob is no anomaly. There are thousands like him serving sentences in our federal and state systems that are disproportionate to their crimes," unquote. There are leading wealthy libertarians in this country who take this position, ladies and gentlemen. Holder is right about one thing. Jacobs is no outlier. Most of the guys in federal prison are there for serious crimes. A 2016 overview from the U.S. Sentencing Commission suggests that if let out, many offenders commit further crimes. For drug crimes specifically, ex-federal prosecutors are the most likely to reoffend upon release. According to the U.S. Sentencing Commission statistics in 2013, around 42% of federal life sentences were imposed for drug trafficking, such as that by Jacobs. And as with Jacobs, that's what they were convicted of, not necessarily the sum of all the crimes they committed. Furthermore, the federal system is precisely designed for kingpins such as Jacobs and his associates, not the low-level offenders that Holder et al. Are claiming are the victims of federal system run amok. The federal government's own statistics show that almost a quarter of those in federal prison for drug-related sentences are not even American citizens. Yellow, are not even American citizens. Holder argues that we should increase Obama's already generous leniency by releasing these narco-traffickers who came here illegally and went on to poison our streets in the pursuit of profits. Releasing them, you might ask. America's Streets, a 2010 investigation by the Department of Justice Inspector General, found that less than 1% of criminally convicted aliens were actually deported upon release. For all smart-on-crime rhetoric, we should be equally concerned about the damage already done by the criminals behind bars, especially in federal prisons, who are not model citizens by any stretch of the imagination. Corey Jacobs is a case in point, Mr. Holder, and same with the others out there who push this pablum. You should ask them when they say, look at these crimes, 3 minor crimes. Yes, I know they're felonies, but 3 strikes and they're out for... Ask them. Can you discuss their actual case? That is, from the briefs that were filed, from the judge's ruling. Ask them. Are these the only crimes that they committed? They're the only crimes they were caught committing. What do you know about these people, actually? Ask them. Because most of these pretend reformers don't have a clue, and they'll make America much, much more dangerous for all of us.